Buongiorno a tutti, Giancarlo Buono. In German it would be gut, like schwarz ist nero. Unfortunately, I will need to speak English, although I am in my hometown, because in IATA we are mandated to speak English during our presentation. So I hope you will excuse me for doing this. But I think it will be okay anyway. I don't know how many of you know IATA, because I see a lot of young people. I see many colleagues from the armed forces. Maybe you are not so familiar with the air transport world. IATA is the International Air Transport Association. It was founded in Havana, Cuba, in 1945. We represent around 290 airlines worldwide, representing around 86% of worldwide passengers and freight traffic. We are a large organization with headquarters in Geneva and Montreal. I am the European regional director for safety and flight operation based in Brussels is my role. I'm also very much involved in EASA activities, being the industry representative in the board of EASA. And I will say a few words about what has been said until now on this topic as well. So let me see if I can get the right arrow here. I think it's this one. So my first experience with aviation psychology was in 1989 when I applied to the Italian Air Force Academy, which I successfully joined after some time. And it was with a test called, if I'm not mistaken, the MNPN, something like that. But I remember something. They kept asking me if I liked flowers. And I like flowers, but I don't want to be a florist. And still, I don't understand what this had to do with being a pilot. But anyway, that was my first approach. I think many of you can see themselves here. And over time, I haven't seen many psychologists anymore. I saw one actually in Austria. My first job in an airline was in Austria. You don't know that. And before being hired, I was actually interviewed by a psychologist. This was back in 1995. And it was quite strange to me, but it worked well, of course. Why are we here? We are here to talk about aviation psychology, but we are doing this because we care about aviation safety. And I wanted to start by trying to understand where we are with aviation safety, how safe we are in the industry, and how safe we are worldwide, not only in Italy or in Europe, but how safe are we worldwide? Well, if we look at the accident statistics for 2022, in IATA we are very big on statistics. We had in 2022 1.21 accidents per million sector, which was a slight increase over the statistic of 2021. However, if we look at what is more meaningful, which is the 10-year average or the 10-year running chart, we can see that we are constantly, and we have been constantly improving our safety performance, although quite marginally, which is normal for what it is an ultra-safe system as aviation. So we make very slow progress, but we do make progress. One thing that you can see from this very complex chart is also that aviation and commercial aviation, because I'm talking about commercial aviation here, okay, what brings you to meetings around the world, what brings you to your holidays, what brings you to see your family, your friends around the world, is not all the same. We have differences in the industry, okay? If you look at the all industry accident rate, which is the red one, and then if you look, for example, at the IATA members' performance and the non-IATA member performance, there are differences. There are not only differences, as we will see later, depending on which part of the industry we are relating to, but also geographically. So if we look at the 5-year, at the 10-year, and then at the 5-year average, the industry has improved its overall safety performance, okay, 52%, with an accident rate in 2022 of 1.1, while in 2013 we were at 2.31. So we are improving. As I said, from a statistical perspective quite considerably, but marginal in terms of absolute number, because when you have one accident per million sector, you understand that it's very difficult to have big numbers. However, the 2022 industry accident rate of 1:1 is below the 5-year accident rolling average, which is at 1.26. We had a spike in 2020. Now, this spike that you see there, you need to be very careful how you interpret it, because in 2020, it was COVID, so we were mainly grounded. It's true that this is a statistic based on million sector, but however, when you are talking with low numbers, if you have 1 or 2 accidents per year, you will still have 1 or 2 accidents per year, but you are comparing it to much less number of flights that were performed. So it's a little bit of a, let's say, a false positive, if I may say so. Now, I was telling you that there are marked differences around the world, although all the efforts that at a global level we're doing through ICAO or through IATA to bring everybody at the same level of safety performance, we still have major differences around the world. Europe, it's clearly one of the safest regions in the world, not necessarily the safest, but once again, we're talking about very small numbers. When we talk about Europe, we're not only talking about the European Union, okay? We're talking about geographical Europe, but still one of the best performing regions in the world at 0.84 accident per million sector in 2022, with a slight, let's say, decrease in performance compared to the previous year and slightly higher than the 5-year average. This is about accident, meaning hull loss, meaning aircraft that are not recoverable. It's not about loss of lives. Now, if we talk about loss of life, which is the very sad part of all this story, what are the killers in commercial aviation? Because you have a lot of accidents that result in the loss of the aircraft, but not necessarily in loss of lives. But then you have a few accidents which will result in major loss of life. So this is the fatality risk. I don't want to explain too much the chart. The bigger the circle, the bigger the killer, okay? So when you have a loss of control in flight, intuitively you can understand you probably kill a lot of people, okay? And this does happen, not so frequently, but it does happen. While on the right-hand side, you have runway excursions that happens quite frequently, but on the other hand, they don't normally necessarily kill a lot of people. So we need to focus both on the events that happen very often and on the events that do not happen so often, but when they happen, they will cause major loss of life, such as I said, loss of control in flight or control flight into terrain, for example. Now, why have I said all of this? Because the problem that we're having, guys, is that you cannot manage what you don't know. And we are not very good at measuring safety linked to mental issues among personnel in the airlines. So one of the difficulties that we are facing is how do we work to improve safety by working on the well-being aspects, on the mental aspects, if we don't know what problems do we have in normal line operations, okay? So normally, mental health issues are what we call a latent condition or latent conditions that are present in the system, and normally they won't cause any accident, but at a certain point, because of a triggering factor, they will result into a major event. They are a major medical threat to flight safely, and we can understand this empirically and intuitively. And they are the leading cause of loss of license between licensed personnel due to the withdrawal of the medical certification, whether temporarily or permanently. Now, we talked about safety, but there is one aspect that we haven't discussed yet, which is it's also an issue in relation to crew recruitment and retention. We are at a time when one of the major constraints to the growth of aviation is, well, you all know we have the green challenge, we have the environmental challenge, but the second major threat is clearly the lack of qualified personnel in various parts of the industry. So Aviation psychology becomes important not only because of safety, but also because we want to make sure that we can recruit and retain the people that we need within the industry. Now, the focus on the industry, and I see a lot of enthusiasm about the work that has been done following the Germanwings accident, which I share to a certain extent, but maybe this is because I was part of the European task force that worked on trying to develop all of this. And when you are part of something, you always think that you could have done better. And I think we could have done much better, although we have done some important things. But still, the focus of all the regulatory work in the last few years, as a consequence of the Germanwings accident, has been on major several mental disorder, okay? A severe mental disorder, which means very extreme and very few cases. Now, in the line, every day, there's something else that we see. We see more common mental health problems that are then the causes of distraction, inattention, fatigue, absence for work, lapses in communication, which is still a major issue in human factor, all of which will have an impact on flight safety. So how do we measure this, and how do we consider this into an SMS, a safety management system of an organization? And we start by saying that mental health should be, regardless of what we have identified within our operation, should always be on the risk register of any airlines and be recognized as a safety risk that has already been identified, regardless of what you've been measuring, because you won't have, let me assure you, too many reports about mental issues with your personnel. So you need to start by saying, this is an issue, we know this is an issue, it must be in my risk register, which means it needs to be mitigated. Now, COVID, as we all know, has had a major impact on mental health and well-being of aviation workers in general. We've been deeply affected. How? We've been subject to quite strong and harsh quarantine rules. We have been having many cases of long home or hotel isolation between flight patterns. I'm sure you all heard about the horror stories of our colleagues, crews, having to lay over in China during the pandemic. We had increased workload due to intensive cargo operation without sometimes the possibility of even having layovers. We had long and irregular working hours, reduced rest opportunity, which resulted in potential fatigue. And also, all of this, in our opinion, has had and may have potential consequences in flight safety. Now, there's not only the COVID, there's not only, let's say, the major disruptive event that have an impact on well-being and mental health of aviation workers. There's only, and I see my friend here is already smiling because they are quite aware of what is happening this summer, although I have to say ENAV, let me say publicly, is doing a great work, and you know that I'm not very lenient normally towards air navigation service provider, but we are going to have a very difficult summer. So if you're going on holiday this year, I don't want to say take the boat or take the train, take the plane, because we need you as our customers, but be prepared, because it's going to be a tough summer. We're going to have major disruption in the European network. We had them last year. We have airports that are not fully ready to take all the traffic. We have navigation service providers across Europe with major structural issues. We have continuous strikes in other countries, guess one. And we have a shortage of personnel, as well as we have the issue that existing regulations that we do have in the fatigue, for example, the flight duty time limitations, cannot address all the effects of operational disruptions. There's always been a gray area. There's always been an area where we need to take tough decisions, and this will have an impact on the mental health and well-being of the crews after a very bad summer last year and what is going to be possibly a very bad summer this year. And we have weather that we don't know. Okay? We don't know how this will impact, but if weather doesn't help us, this picture could even look worse. okay? So, what do we do here? Well, we need to work together. It's not the time to apportion blame. Multi-sector collaboration is required to promote mental well-being of aviation personnel to deliver psychosocially safe and supportive aviation environment. So, everything that I told you does have an impact every day on the well-being and the mental health of aviation staff. Now, when we talk about safety performance principles and how we perform safely, we relate to the manner in which people do perform their roles when they go to work every day. And overall performance of aviation personnel relies on an individual, of the collective, the teams, all the groups being in a state of well-being. Otherwise, performance will be affected. We have done, I believe, a good job with pilot well-being programs, which support pilots during personal crisis and or period of stresses in their lives, which may impact relationship, health, or professional performance. And this program provides peer-to-peer support to pilots, offering referrals to professional resources whenever there is a need, with the strictest confidentiality. Now, in certain parts of the world it is working, in certain other parts of the world we are not there yet, but we are on the good path. We have identified the path. Now, where we are lagging behind, as you have said, Michela, is, Monica. Michela, sorry. You see that my eyesight is not what it used to be, you know, because you have. In other parts of the industry, in other areas of the industry, such as engineering, such as ground operation, this is not there yet. And we need to develop it because, by the way, the areas where we're probably having, because we always focus on the pilots and air traffic controller as the weakest link, but I'm not sure this is always the case, right? So, and by the way, the areas where we have more problems in terms of retaining personnel is not within pilots, so with our traffic controller, is in ground operation, is in maintenance today. So we need to look into these areas as well to have employees assistance program that will work in the similar manners. We, as IATA, together with the FALPA, which is the International Federation of Airline Pilot Association, together with the EASA, together with the FAA, that you all know, we recommend peer support programs to be built and be an integral part of a safety management system of an organization. Not bolt-on, not something that works on the side, okay, but something that works together with the SMS, within the SMS, in an integrated manner. Now, as we move forward, what are we going to have also? We're going to have increasing level of stress and anxiety because of job uncertainty, okay, that will impact human performance. This is something that is there to remain. And we therefore recommend organizations to perform additional risk assessments considering mental health and well-being impact on human performance. By the way, I'm not sure you are aware that there is now a task force being set up by EASA to look into the network performance for the summer this year, to look exactly at what type of safety issues, including the well-being and the mental health of crews and personnel will be during major disruptions, okay? This was triggered by European Cockpit Association, so kudos to them for bringing this forward. But regulation will not solve all problems, okay? Risk assessments will not solve all problems. We need to educate, we need to tell people, we need to remember people to take care of themselves, to be responsible, to be fit for duty, and to refer to support programs whenever there is a need. And we really need to tell them in a way, not just to make some publicity, but, you know, convince them that this is the way to go. Now, once again, I leave you with more questions than answers, unfortunately. That's my style, okay? I like to ask questions, not to respond to questions so much, because I like to hear. Remember, you cannot manage what you do not know. How do we manage mental health? How do we measure it? How do we measure everyday problem? Forget the Germanwings accident. That was one. Maybe we will have some other major accident. We hope not, but when? We don't know. So how do we measure mental health in normal operation? When does mental health becomes an unacceptable risk and therefore we need to take action? Do we have enough visibility over what's happening within an organization, over what is the status of mental health of our employees? Do we have a common taxonomy? In other ways, do we speak the same language where we talk about events linked to mental health? And how do we encourage our staff to tell us, to report, to let us know what is happening out there? My 20 minutes are over right now, and therefore I have to finish my presentation. Thank you. Thank you for the applause. Grazie. Any question? I will be around for the coffee break anyway, so if any of you has something that you... Oh, yes, one. Not too difficult, please. Please.
Now, does it work?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Just to add what you said, we are always referring to the words of the pilots when it comes to mental health, and that was also after the Germanwings accident, the rulemaking task. I was part of it, and I still remember when somebody raised the concern, yeah, well, there are some other stakeholders and some other people in the sharp end of aviation and safety, and what about the mechanics, engineers, flight attendants, and what about ground operations? And the answer, so please do not type it now and copy it. The answer at that time was pretty simple. That would be too many. So that is one of the weakest arguments that you can ever believe. And what happens now, okay, with the pilots have been implemented, although it is now in a review state, so also changes should be done on that part as well. However, I'm also a member of the Human Factors Curator for London's group with EASA, and one of the highest priority identified by EASA, which is already a good point, is a safety issue assessment on lack of industry-wide staff supporting programs. That's what we're on to, and there's a group where we have also participants and members with background on ground operations, of course about the engineering, the mechanical side, as well as also operational personnel, so these kind of, what is it called? When the pilot is calling in, something happens, then they end up where? Yeah, that is most probably ops control. So that you have also those personnel involved as well. Huh? So there is something going on. We are talking about safety issue system, which might end up with EASA in abyss as the best industry intervention strategy before something is going into rulemaking tasks. So we are talking about a time frame like this. So if there's some pressure from the outside, either from organizations like us, or from IATA, from ICAO, from wherever, that might be helpful.
Thank you. So this is not a question, it's a comment, but I have to answer anyway.
No. The question is make pressure. Yeah.
I'm joking, of course, but yes. Now, clearly, there needs to be certain regulatory framework, but a word of caution here. We cannot think, and I'm not afraid of saying this in front of even Alessio, even if he left already, but I tell him all the time, we cannot think of solving everything by regulating. Yes, we need regulatory framework, but please, let's not turn always to EASA to ask for a new regulation.
Let's not wait for them.
And let's not wait for the 5 minimum years that it needs to create a regulation in Europe. We are a mature system. An ultra-safe system is a mature system. Otherwise, we wouldn't have this safety performance. No way. Okay? Because remember that if you're complying with the law, you're being legal, you're not being necessarily safe. The history is full of perfectly legal airplanes that have crashed. Okay? So we need to work as an organization, start doing that. We don't have to wait for EASA. Now, the work that you're doing in the CAG, in the Collaborative Analysis Group, is very important, because that's not only about creating new regulation, but it's about looking at the best way of addressing certain issue. And this may happen through safety promotion, this may happen through many other ways, not necessarily to have a new implementing rule that we don't understand and we don't know how to implement. So yes, going back to your point, we need a regulatory framework. Remember that we still have entire areas of the operation that are not regulated, such as ground operation. Now we have the first regulation coming in the next few months. So we need to do a lot as organization, and the work that you're doing is extremely important because it's work that otherwise nobody would be doing. Therefore, talk to the airlines, talk to the airports, talk to the navigation service providers, talk to the ground handling companies, because this is where the work needs to be done, first of all, in my opinion. And then, yes, we will need eventually a regulatory framework. Possibly not too prescriptive, because there needs to be a balance, okay? We don't want cages. We want frameworks to lead us. We are a mature industry. So that would be my comment. Thank you.